much. Good evening. Tonight we are investigating the real X-Files. If indeed the truth is out there, we may well have found some of it. On the show tonight, an internationally famous French psychic who says he moves objects only with the power of his mind. And you'll see what happens when we put him to the test. We travel to one of the most haunted locations in the world. And is it possible to dream the future? At a London research centre, we monitor the dreams of a man who says he can, and then discover if they come true. First, though, some people say that if there really are captured UFOs, the authorities couldn't keep it a secret. Somehow word would get out. Well, maybe that's what we're about to see. Information that's leaked out. Area 51 is the most secret military base in the world. Many people have seen strange lights performing maneuvers above it. Then recently, President Clinton placed a huge exclusion zone around it, so it's now impossible to view the base. What are the dark secrets that lie inside Area 51? The American government denies that this place even exists. But this Russian satellite photo tells a different story, showing huge hangars and an enormous runway. The place is Area 51 in the Nevada desert. It was built in the 1950s to test top-secret aircraft. The stealth fighter was developed here. Security's tight inside and outside the base. American scientist Robert Lazar claimed he worked in the highest security section called S4.
The security was unbelievably oppressive. There was a security guard everywhere following you all the time. There was never any free discussion allowed, which is the basis of science.
Recently, Lazar caused a sensation when he revealed that he'd been ordered to investigate the propulsion systems of captured alien spacecraft.
My work involved the back engineering of an extraterrestrial craft, specifically the propulsion and power source. The UFOs are very typical. As far as a typical UFO is, it's two inverted dishes, two inverted pie plates, if you wish, and with a hump on the top. Metallic looking, no wings, no fins, no visible propulsion source. Inside they're very sparse. If you come in the main entryway, you'll see 3 seats, the central reactor and waveguide that goes to the ceiling, the 3 gravity amplifiers surrounding it, and you'll really see just about nothing else.
The authorities immediately denied his claims, and now he says they've tried to erase his identity from all official records. George Knapp is a well-respected investigative reporter with KLAS-TV. He broke the story, including the claim that Lazar worked at Los Alamos in New Mexico, where the atomic bomb was developed.
The lab denied any knowledge of his existence, denied that he'd ever worked there. We came back with a phone book from the lab that shows Bob's name in it, that he was, in fact, there. They still denied any knowledge that he had ever worked there. I asked Bob if he'd be willing to take a polygraph test, and he didn't hesitate. The polygraph examiner, after conducting a series of 4 different tests, concluded that Bob is telling the truth about what he saw out there, about working at the base, about seeing the flying saucers, about working on anti-gravity propulsion systems, telling the truth. I had a former employee quiz him for a period of 2 hours about simple things, not where are the flying saucers stored, but where's the cafeteria? How do you pay for your meal? What's it look like inside? Those sorts of things, and that employee is convinced that Bob really was out there.
Were you threatened?
I was threatened, and my wife's life was threatened also.
And why do you think that those threats were not carried out?
Probably because that I went public.
In the recent blockbusting film Independence Day, the plot features Area 51 and a recovered alien spacecraft.
As you can see from the repairs, we've been trying to put her back together since the late 1960s.
It's long been suggested that alien spacecraft have crashed on Earth.
It's only happened in the last few days.
The most famous incident happened allegedly near Roswell Air Base, New Mexico, in 1947. Eyewitnesses claim they saw wreckage of a flying saucer and injured extraterrestrials. Whatever happened at Roswell, there's no dispute about the many official documents which indicate the American government knows more than it's letting on about UFOs.
How did these craft get into the hands of the US government?
I really have no idea how the craft got there. I don't believe there were crashes because the craft weren't damaged. And that's about all that I can say.
How do you know, though, that these were extraterrestrial craft?
First of all, we were back engineering the technology, which means we were taking a finished product and trying to figure out how it was originally designed and developed. Second of all, the technology that we're dealing with doesn't exist.
Did you ever see them fly?
They were frequently tested. They were tested normally on Wednesday nights when the traffic was lowest in the area. I saw one test close up and several tests at a distance of about 15 miles.
Certainly the American military have been testing saucer-shaped craft. This top-secret research film from the 60s has just come to light. But even after nearly 30 years, the security services still refuse to talk about it. More recently, work on so-called black projects has been carried out at Area 51, including the stealth aircraft and Strategic Defense Initiative weapons to be used in outer space. But were they only developed to protect America against earthly enemies? Or was there a more urgent purpose behind President Reagan's Star Wars project?
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This unique NASA transmission shows an object following the space shuttle. The picture flares in what could be a magnetic pulse. Next, is this a missile or laser weapon being fired from Earth at the UFO? The UFO changes direction and accelerates away at what experts believe to be a speed of up to 900,000 miles an hour. Could it be the UFO was taking evasive action from Star Wars missiles fired at it from the Earth? Many believe this is only the latest evidence of a continuing series of cover-ups of the real truth about UFOs. How many people here this evening believe in ghosts? Okay, well, one university study estimated that 42% of the population believe they've actually seen one. Vanessa Steele, a psychic from Birmingham, claims to be able to tell whether there are genuine entities in a building or not. So without any prior knowledge of where she was going, we sent her to one of the most haunted locations in the world, a Danish castle. What would she make of this 13th century fortress that's had more than its fair share of ghostly happenings?
One day I was standing and waiting outside the castle, and this grey woman appears in front of me. She was like a shadow, and she was walking, floating, away from me. I got really scared and ran away.
When I woke up, I saw the white lady standing in the doorway. It was open, the door, and I could see a flash, a light, like with fog in. So then I went out of bed and walked close to her for looking a little more careful, but then she disappeared like a soap bubble.
I was all alone in the castle and I had to get a bed up in the attic. And I went up and I sensed I wasn't alone, but I had to get this bed, so I went all the way in the back of the attic, and suddenly the door slammed and all the lights went out.
If it is, as this place is, terribly haunted, I sense them, I feel them, and occasionally you can smell them. The room will fluctuate in temperature. You can have a lot of people in there, but somebody sensitive like myself would sense that terrible drop in temperature. Terribly, terribly sad.
Vanessa was accompanied by Dr. William Roll, a parapsychologist who suspects that changes in the magnetic field can interfere with the brain, causing people to hallucinate. Could this explain the drag's hauntings? And would his magnetometer detect any physical changes when Vanessa sensed that there was a presence in the room?
We have found in some so-called haunted houses that some of the phenomena seem to be related to familiar types of energy. They seem to be unusual manifestations of common forms of energy.
Very strongly drawn here. Unhappy.
Oh, really?
Terribly, terribly unhappy. But I want to be drawn that way.
I see.
Almost as though, I don't know why I want to be drawn that way, but I want to be almost pushed that way.
Vanessa didn't know that the next room on her tour was the infamous Grey Room. It was here that the current owner's son, Frederick, had sensed the spirit of the Grey Lady.
Oh, what a wonderful room. Very much a lady's room. Sense a very old lady here, very long, old costumes, but very dark, very brocaded, very much, but she was a madam. She was a tyrant. She was, and she lingered. She doesn't like anything being changed. She's a lady that is very much, I feel as though she's drawing me here. Come here, come here.
But although Vanessa felt the Grey Lady was standing directly in front of her, Dr. Roll's magnetometer recorded no changes in the magnetic field whatsoever. But Vanessa had a more sinister surprise in store. On the top floor of the castle is a recess containing the skeleton of the daughter of a former master of Dragsholm, who became pregnant out of wedlock. She was bricked up alive more than 400 years ago by her furious parents. The skeleton, which is now on display in a glass case, was covered by sheets so that Vanessa had absolutely no idea what lay behind it.
It's sad. And I want murder.
Oh.
Not very old. Has this been opened up? Has this been opened?
Yes.
I want to be buried in here.
I see.
I don't want to go in here no more.
So is Dragsholm Castle haunted by ghosts? Or could people be hallucinating because of sporadic magnetic changes in the Earth's crust? Well, Vanessa certainly picked up on details she could not have normally known. But when Dr. Roll returned to the Grey Room later that night, he did record unusually high changes in the magnetic field. Make of it what you will, the mystery of Dragsholm Castle remains. Is it conceivable that your mind can travel into the future while you sleep? Meet a man who says it is, and witness another focus his incredible power on a steel bar and bend it in just a moment. The mystery of the human mind is probably one of the greatest enigma we've yet to understand. If we ever succeed, it might at last be possible to accept and explain those paranormal abilities that some people seem to possess. Among the most fascinating are those who claim to be able to foretell the future. We tracked down one man who says he can dream what will happen tomorrow. We asked him to do just that. Malcolm Besant may look like the ordinary man in the street, but he claims to have a startling paranormal ability, predicting the future in his dreams.
Most people's reaction is one of disbelief. They immediately get apprehensive or feel threatened, I suppose, because it affects their sense of reality. It can't be explained at the moment, but it does seem that time is not linear and that the past, present, and future all coexist simultaneously. And information about the future is out there, and I seem to be able to access it quite easily.
At the age of 18, Malcolm took part in a series of experiments at the Maimonides Dream Laboratory in New York. where his ability to predict the future was tested with amazing results.
The idea was they wanted to see if I could dream about the future. And I would go to sleep in the laboratory, and each time I dreamt, they would wake me up. The following day, an event would be created, and they wanted to see if I had dreamt about that event in advance. One day, the experience they had chosen for me comprised of pictures from the film 2001. And the previous night, I had dreamt about stars and outer space things, and also something that was going to happen 30 years from now. And this took place in 1971.
In one series of American experiments, he correctly dreamed the future 14 out of 16 times. Could he do it again at St. Thomas's Hospital here in London? Sleep expert Simone de Lacy placed electrodes on his scalp, near his eyes, and on the muscles of the chin to record what stage of sleep he was in.
Okay, Malcolm, everything's okay this side. It's time to go off to sleep now. Sweet dreams.
Malcolm's sleep patterns were monitored during the night, and every time he went into REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, he would be awoken to describe his dreams.
During rapid eye movement sleep, we have very active thought processes, but they're far more scrambled than conscious cognitive thought during the daytime. It first, or usually occurs in normal sleep, 90 minutes after sleep onset, and it probably lasts about 10 minutes in the first instance, and then as it progresses it gets longer and longer till about 25 minutes at the end of sleep. And it's the last REM period, the last 25 minutes or so, that we actually remember, or more likely to remember, although we have been dreaming throughout the night.
And if Malcolm's able to do what he claims, then what we're seeing here is the future. Every time he entered REM, he was woken and asked to describe what he'd just dreamt.
Malcolm, can you wake up now? Malcolm, wake up, Malcolm. Malcolm, can you tell me what you were dreaming about?
I was in this health food restaurant, and I was talking to this American woman from Palm Beach. We seemed to know each other.
Malcolm was then allowed to go back to sleep. Later, he dreamed again. Listen carefully to this one.
It was like a pageant or something, something to do with the Lord Mayor. And I was playing a role in some way. Everybody was, not just me. And there was somebody riding a hobby horse, and it was like a pantomime. And the Lord Mayor was in it. You know, like the character Dick Whittington. All the buildings were like theatrical scenery.
In the morning, a researcher arrived to take Malcolm out for the day. We filmed them every step of the way to see if anything from his dreams would come true. And we didn't have to wait long. Before they set out, they went to the hospital canteen for breakfast. Malcolm had never been there before in his life.
Oh, wow, look on the wall.
Oh my God, it's Dick Whittington, Lord Mayor of London. I can't believe that.
It's the pageant and everything, yeah. The first thing that hit me was the picture was of Dick Whittington as Lord Mayor, wearing the clothes I had described in my dream. Even the colors were the same. And I was also struck by the fact that I had dreamt of the buildings being two-dimensional. It occurred to me that's exactly what a picture is, two-dimensional.
So another extraordinary achievement for the man who sees the future in his dreams. Today, we began a series of extraordinary paranormal experiments using remote cameras in a quiet room in another part of this building. At his invitation, we were testing the amazing claims of an internationally known psychic, JeanPierre Gerard from France. He maintains that he possesses an astonishing paranormal ability to move solid objects using only the power of his mind. He also claims he uses these same mental powers to bend solid metal bars. The experiment is being recorded on 2 separate video machines so that everything that happens can be closely examined. Maurice Gross, a leading psychical investigator, checks for fraudulent devices but finds nothing suspicious. Monsieur Gerard wants us to take him seriously. He's been tested in many European and American laboratories under strict scientific conditions and has apparently proved that his mental energy is capable of affecting solid matter. Then, after more than 2 hours, our cameras recorded this.
Bent.
There's no doubt the bent bar no longer rolls freely. But when we examined the recording, you can see that Maurice Gross's attention is momentarily distracted. And in that instant, is Monsieur Gerard applying force and bending the bar with his hands? It's hard to tell from this angle, but what do you think? On to the second experiment. We're still in the same room. The cameras are still recording everything that happens. And Maurice Gross, the paranormal investigator, is making his final security checks to guard against trickery. Remember, Monsieur Gerard says he's going to move these objects using nothing but his psychic powers. Suddenly, after 45 minutes, amazingly, the egg cup is moving. But there's the giveaway. In undeniable close-up and practically invisible to the naked eye, around the egg cup is a very fine nylon thread, thinner than a human hair. It's looped around Monsieur Gerard's fingers as he cleverly drags the egg cup over the edge of the table. Later, we discovered this virtually invisible nylon filament where Monsieur Gerard had been sitting, and professional magicians will immediately recognize it. So let's see an action replay. Ingenious magic, certainly. A paranormal marvel, I don't think so. We research many items that fail to get on the program because we're able to debunk them early on. JeanPierre Gerard has managed to convince many of the world's leading investigators that he's psychic. But this evening, he was unable to convince us. Once again, that's all we have time for this evening. Join me next week in the paranormal world. Good night.